First order of business is the roll call and the adoption of, or termination of a quorum, and opening your can of pop. Here. Thank you. Up next is the adoption of the agenda. Is there any items to add or delete from the agenda?
Second.
Motion by Wright to adopt, second by Peterson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Up next is general public comment. General public comment is a time for members of the public to discuss, express concerns on the council, to the council, any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken on the item unless it's placed on the agenda by a unanimous vote of the council members present. I have no current speaker request forms. Does anybody wish to speak on anything not on the agenda? None appearing. I'm going to move on to consent items numbers 1 through 8. I will now open public comment on items 1 through 8. I have no speaker request forms on any of these items. Does anybody wish to speak on these items? None appearing. I'm going to close public comment on, and now I will go to the council for removal of any items from the consent calendar. Chair will recognize Alderman Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. Item number 7, please.
Item number 7. Is there any further things to be removed for consideration? Bonnie Peterson.
Item number 8.
Item number 8. Okay, we have 1/4 of our agenda is now going to be discussed. Any further discussion? Would you like to, I need a motion to adopt 1 through 6? Motion by Doyle, second by Peterson. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, items 1 through 6 are now approved. Moving on to item number 7, which is to authorize the approval of recommendations in the job classification and compensation plan for the city's non-union employees prepared by Condrey and Associates. And Steve Laurenti, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if this needs to be a motion, if it needs to come back to me to make the motion, or if one of my colleagues will make the motion. I just want to clarify and make sure that on item number 7, we are approving the compensation plan, which was the Plan B for, not for elected officials, but for city staff and directors and that type. Jeff, thank you so much. May I ask you a question, Chair?
By all means.
Possible. Thank you. Jeff, can I thank you for entertaining me? I'm grabbing you as you're walking in. Number 7, of course, is the approval of the recommendations.
Right.
On the okay, I just want to make sure that what we're approving is not also the portion for the elected officials.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, what we would like to see done, and what the mayor would like to do, is to address, it's always been done by separate resolution as far as elected officials, and what he would like to do is address, ultimately it's up to you, but he would like to see elected officials' salaries addressed as part of the 2015 budget process. And I believe he has included a slight raise for elected officials in his 2015 budget, but he didn't want this to get bogged down in a, we'd really like this to not get bogged down in a political situation, and this just be for the city's non-union staff at this point. Even though Condrey and Associates did take a look at elected officials' salaries, but we'd like this particular item to not include those as far as, if it is approved.
Okay. Do you think we need to modify the title of this? Because in the attachment, it does talk about the recommendations to increase elected official salaries as well. So I just want to make sure that what we're approving and what we approve on Monday night at the council meeting is just that and excludes elected officials.
Unless the city attorney feels differently, I would think that just in your motion on Monday night to approve that you include that, just include that caveat that it won't include elected officials at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Jerry Wright.
Make a motion to approve the proposal from Condrey excluding elected official package.
Motion by Wright, second by Laurenti, and to exclude the elected officials from the package. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8. Item number 8 is a notification to the City Council that staff is reviewing Chapter 15.04 of the RCMC regarding the process to suspend and/or revoke a contractor's license and the fee associated with the process, and bring forward an update and appropriate amendment for council consideration. I'm going to entertain a motion to acknowledge. Motion to acknowledge by Laurenti, second by Peterson. Ms. Peterson, you have the floor.
Thank you. I have a question for Joel Landine, please.
By all means.
Okay. Joel, I didn't get a chance to call you on this because I was been swamped with phone calls, but Miss Graham that was here before, is her thing being held up, or by this, or we're proceeding on that while we make changes?
No, we're still proceeding on it, but, there would still be an appeal fee. I think looking at it, though, I haven't had a chance. I've been out of the office as well, and so has Mr. Limbaugh. So I think we need to talk about it. My personal view on it is there's a reason there's a fee in place, and there's a reason there's the process there is. Whether it's coming to the council or to a building board, we want to make sure that, we try to weed out complaints that aren't legitimate and things. But looking at some of the current, I think we do need to take a look at the process and make sure that, it's fair to everyone, not only the contractors, but also the citizens. And I just don't want to do anything hasty where we swing the pendulum too far the other way, and now it's, and we have to come back and do another correction. But I think that the issue with Ms. Ross and with Ms. Graham warrants taking a look at it and seeing if there's a way we can balance the process again so it's fair to everyone.
Okay, I just want to make sure her issue wasn't being held up or that we're doing a two-prong approach. So, thank you.
I would say I just saw that I think Ms. Ross just came in and sat in the back. So,
Okay. Mr. Chair recognizes Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. Brad, Mr. Salon, if you could if you could answer a question for me, that would be great. And just let me know if this isn't in your purview. But my question to you is on the Contractor Board of Appeals. When an item gets to them, a complaint, if you will, is that logged on that particular contractor? Is that history kept?
It hasn't been in the past, but it sure can be. Now that we have our new Trackit system, we could do something like that because we have all the contractors in the computer system now.
Okay.
Before we didn't, but now we could.
Okay. All right, thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Any further discussion? Motion is to acknowledge. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now moving on to non-consent items numbers 9 and 10. I'm now going to open public comment on numbers 9 and 10, and I have no speaker requests for them. Does anybody wish to speak on number 9 or number 10? Ma'am, I believe you're, Denise, your item is, you're actually presenting the item number 9, is that correct? Okay. You're number 9. No, you can come up when we'll see if there's any further discussion publicly. Is there any further public comment on items number either 9 or 10? Okay, I'll close public comment. I'll move on to number 9. This is you, ma'am. Item number 9 is Denise Ross report regarding process following determination by Building Board of Appeals and request to waive fee for appeal of a determination by building officials at 3210 Kirkwood Drive. Ma'am, you may have the floor.
Thank you very much.
If you could identify yourselves, sir, and your address, please, ma'am.
Yep. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. As you know, my name is Denise Ross, and I live in Chapel Valley at 3210 Kirkwood Drive with my husband and our 2 young sons. I attended the last City Council meeting for an unrelated reason, and I heard the story of another homeowner that had a story very similar to my own, and so I decided to share my experience with you also. Excuse me. As you might know, we are in a dispute with our roofing contractor, and that dispute came before the Rapid City Building Board of Appeals in October and November. I'm going to try to limit my remarks to the city's involvement in this rather complex saga. If I include any other details, it is to help you understand all that homeowners confront when they find themselves in situations such as ours. I hope that our story provides some insight to you as policymakers so that you can improve this process. You know, I've been a working journalist for almost 25 years, and I've covered all stripes of public bodies, from school boards to city councils of all sizes, legislative committees, the Gaming Commission, the Board of Regents, even congressional field hearings. And I've never encountered a process as confounding as the city's process for filing a complaint against a licensed contractor. We have had some issues with city staff along the way, and I can answer any questions you might have about that at any time. But I hope to focus today on the process, which I believe has some significant holes in it. Here are the highlights from our case. And again, these are the highlights. There is a lot more to this story. So feel free to ask questions if you feel like we need to elaborate on any particular point. We began speaking with city staff in June or July of 2013, late June, early July, somewhere along there. We were not afforded a spot on the building board's agenda until October. In November, the city's Building Board of Appeals found our roofing contractor in violation of 3 different city ordinances. And those are in the minutes, but I pulled the relevant part of the minutes that speaks to those violations and the votes, if you're interested in that. At that November meeting, we were told that our contractor would have to address these issues or his contractor's license would be in jeopardy. After that meeting, I followed up with the city attorney's office, seeking to find out what the city's process would be following that building board determination of the city code and ordinance violations. And this is where the process really fell apart. The position of the city's attorney's office seemed to be a bit of a moving target, but it was essentially that there was nothing more to be done. Now, while we were filing our complaint with the city, our contractor was busy at the courthouse. He filed a lien against our property and a civil suit against us. He is seeking full payment for the work that the building board found to be deficient. And it is these civil proceedings that the city attorney's office now and the city building official now contend are preventing the city of Rapid City from enforcing its own ordinances. So let's unpack this just a little bit. If you are a contractor found by the city to have performed work that's in violation of city ordinance and code, all you need to do to protect your contractor's license is sue the homeowner, and that will stop the city enforcement process in its tracks. You can see in the letter that was attached to your agenda that the city building official plans to take no action against our contractor, and if we want to appeal that decision, it will cost us a $250 filing fee. And I am hoping that you will waive that fee because we do want to appeal that ruling. So where does this leave us as homeowners? We are scheduled to give depositions in our civil case next week. As you know, probably, there's a very minimal, low burden of proof for anyone to file a lien against your property. It is a very costly and extensive process with a high burden of proof to get that lien removed. So we are working with an attorney on that process. The lien against our property is for $19,000. And all of this is going on while the Building Board of Appeals ruled more than 6 months ago that the work on our home fell short of the standards of the city code in 3 different places. If you would accept some suggestions and observations, it seems to me that the revocation or even the suspension of a contractor's license is an extreme measure. Yet it is my understanding that this is the only tool in the city's toolbox when it comes to enforcing these matters. We could argue over whether the city staff might have had the discretion to set a deadline to fix our problems, after which a contractor's license might have been suspended. That would seem to me to be a logical step, but I would also suggest a system of fines that the city itself routinely relies upon when it deals with contractors, where the fines compound each day that the problems are not resolved. It is my vague understanding that there might be some kind of a fine available to impose on these contractors, but I have heard that it is under $1,000, and this is yet another piece of this process that remains a little bit cloudy to me. In any event, a fine that small on a project the size of ours seems pitifully small, and so if you did consider fines, maybe they should be set as a percentage of the total cost of the job. I would also suggest that enforcement actions in these matters not be left to the sole discretion of one city employee. It would seem more equitable and democratic if the building board itself set out the enforcement process that followed after its decisions. And going forward, regardless of what happens in our case, I hope the city's process can be reformed so that others who find themselves in our situation understand what the outcome might be when they do file a complaint with the city, and that they go into the process feeling like they're fully informed. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. Chair recognizes Jerry Wright.
I make a motion that this be referred to the Building Code of Appeals with the fee being waived by the City of Rapid City. If I could hold the floor, please. After a second.
Excuse me, motion by Wright, second by Doyle. And you still have the floor, Mr. Wright?
Thank you. I just want to share on the record that I am most concerned, and I've done this in memos, that where the City of Rapid City, I think we need to do some very serious reflection on this issue, and I'm saying publicly because it needs to be said publicly, where we're issuing permits and standards and so forth, that we need to be prepared to handle them appropriately, and I think we need some inward looking and search to do that. I know the public relies upon whether they have a false sense of security or it is whatever it is. They do turn to us for that, and I think we've, if I get myself in trouble, I think we've let them down. I think we have a lot of work to do in this area. Thank you.
Any further discussion? The item is to send it to the Building Board of Appeals and not charge the $250 fee. Is that correct, Maggie? Okay. Chair recognizes Charity Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for being so pleased that I'm going to comment. I have a question for the attorney, if I may.
By all means.
Mr. Landine, I'm curious, did you take note of Ms. Ross's suggestions? Is that something that we can incorporate into looking at these policy changes, procedural changes?
Yeah, I did take note of them. I think some of them might be workable. You know, the problem is we have a criminal sanction, but that's even lengthier process. I don't know that we have the authority to impose administrative fees, but if we do, that would certainly be something to look at. Administrative fine. That's something that we would need to look at. What I will say generally is I agree we need to look at how we're handling enforcement of the board's decisions, one way or another. Whether that's through the suggestions Ms. Ross made or another means, I definitely think that's something we should take a look at.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure her comments and suggestions, which were obviously very well thought out, weren't falling on deaf ears, and that we will see to the powers that we have, the extent capable, that we can take a look at implementing something like that. So I'm sure as it works its way through the process, you'll be notified and welcome to give input at that time.
That would be
So
great.
do you understand, Ms. Ross, the motion that's on the floor?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Up next is Mr. Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. Denise, thank you for bringing this forward. Thank you for your attire, your choice of attire today. I think you have very good taste. But on the subject, I was hoping that we wouldn't have a motion to waive the fee, because I think in a larger perspective, the policy is sound. The fee is meant really to make sure that we get bona fide, if you will, complaints that come to the city, because it involves city staff time. Whenever there's a complaint that goes to the Contractor Board of Appeals, there'll be a lot of staff time taken up involved with that, which is why I believe, obviously, the fee is there. I mean, from your own perspective, coming out of your own pocket, I understand why you like that, but from the perspective of policy, I have a problem with it, and we're setting a precedent today, which I don't think is a positive thing. It's good for you, but for the policy of the entire city, I think it's a negative. So I will be voting against that purely based on that. But I do appreciate your bringing forth what's happened with you, and I do agree with you, and I think most of the council, if not all of the council, agrees that there are maybe some additional steps or some steps we need to remove or change in the process. I agree with you. There's maybe some process things we need to do here, whether it be punitive, charges, if you will, or the punitive phases of where we find in your particular case there were 3 issues where they did not follow city code. There should be something that hits them pretty hard in their pocketbook, much like the $250 fee for you to appeal this particular decision. So I think it should be, that could be an area where we need to look at. And there's also some other areas, as I asked Mr. Salon, about whether there's a history kept once they go to the Board of Appeals, and there is some things that were found that contractor didn't do according to code. We need to hold on to that for a while, much like we do for licenses with alcohol businesses. we keep kind of a history with them, and the police provide us those histories so that we can make a very informed decision. So I think that would also be another area where we can maybe tweak the process, and I'm hoping that that will come forward, and we need to do that. But I just wanted to let you know that I appreciate your coming forward, but I won't support waiving the fee, and obviously you understand why. So
I do, if I might make
No.
a comment.
Sure, absolutely, go ahead.
Just, my husband and I, we have the means to write a $250 check today. I think there's probably a lot of people in Rapid City for whom that would be a very significant hardship. You know, as maybe something smaller than that would be reasonable.
And I appreciate that, and that might be one other thing that we can look at in the process that we can tweak to still make sure that we don't get frivolous complaints, because, you know, it's the city government. We want to make sure that we're not waiving fees, because once we do it for you, as you know,
I've sat through those meetings where there's a lot of people
Absolutely.
who have a lot to say. So, I
So,
know
and
what-
that's why I would be voting no, and hopefully in the future we will maybe look at reducing that fee so that we still keep the frivolous complaints out. But I appreciate your coming forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Chair recognizes Jerry Wright.
I will respectfully disagree with my distinguished councilman at the other end. I think that I'm not aware of any legislative or governmental body that will charge a fee to hear from their citizens. So this is what this is a hearing to us, to hear from you. If you were seeking damages or something else, that's a little different, so I don't agree with Steve on that. The other thing I wanted to add, because I had stated earlier, I am concerned that when we issue license permits, whatever, irregardless of what they are, that we need to be prepared to do the job appropriately. And I know we're in the process of preparing a budget for next year, and I ask that the staff and their mayor accordingly address this item within their budget, so that if they are issuing permits and so forth, that they have the adequate resources to do the job adequately. If they're not given the resources, they can't do it, and we're going to be in the same situation. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Charity Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My understanding of the situation, Denise, please flag me down if I get off track in
Okay.
any way. Ms. Ross has already gone through the building board process. She's already been through that. Her issues have been heard. The board has already determined that her 3 of the 4 issues that she brought to them were founded. We're kind of doing this process backward. Now she has no other recourse but to go back to this board that she's already spoken in front of, and she gets to pay for the privilege when they've already determined, and they're probably not going to come up with a new determination. They already favored her. So the process is flawed.
And I think that's the process, because it's up to the discretion of the building official, as you probably know, what enforcement action will be taken against a contractor in a case like ours. But the building official's tools are to suspend or revoke a license, which is pretty extreme. So if you're in the building official's shoes, that's a pretty tough call to make, or pretty difficult call to make, to pull a license, especially when you're looking at just one case and one homeowner. You don't have. It's easy if there's a long list of problems from a lot of different homeowners. So I agree with you. It's the process, and the process hasn't been fixed yet. So in our particular case, I guess all we can do is go back to the building board and ask them to take a look at that decision and see what they might want to do something different.
And just for my colleagues' benefit, I think, one thing that's been kind of missed is, had the building official taken or suspended the license, then it would be the roofer that would have to pay the fee to go to the building board, and he could appeal and go through that process, and you could be
I
there
suppose
to
that's
give
true, yeah.
testimony. But I guess my take on being okay with suspending this fee is that you've already been through it. It's already been heard. There's not going to be any administrative time. All the facts there. The file's been collected. It's all there. It's just going to be a rehearing. So I don't think we're setting a negative precedent. I yield.
Okay, the motion is to send to the Building Board of Appeals and waive the $250 fee. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Oh, one no from Steve Laurenti. Item number 10 is authorize Winter Storm Atlas equipment purchases, continued from June 2nd City Council meeting. Chair recognizes Jerry Wright.
Make a motion to approve, but I have one comment after I have a second.
Motion approved by Wright, second by Peterson, and you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Question to either Terry or Donnie. I know there's a V plow in here. Should we not be looking at more rotaries? That's a technical question, because if you get tight snow and tight quarters, is V plow gonna really solve the problem?
Real quick answer to that. In the 2015 budget, we've programmed in an additional loader to help supplement some of the rotary snow blowers that we have.
I think personally, that's where we need to be looking, so you can get in, but that's just a sidebar comment, and I support it. So thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, some of the equipment we have some plugged in here, but some departments also have programmed it into our normal 2015 budget that we've proposed.
The chair recognizes probably for the last time in 2014, Bonnie Peterson.
Well, is that a challenge?
No, it's not a challenge. I just was
Okay.
lamenting the fact that you will be departing our committee.
Thank you, Chad. I wanted to clarify the motion. Mr. Wright, that is to take this money out of undesignated cash? Is that what you, okay, that's what I seconded, and I just wanted to make sure that we had that on record. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Motion is to approve. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. And before we adjourn, I'd like to take this moment to say goodbye to one council member here that's going to be leaving us. It's been a pleasure to serve with you, ma'am. Even though I can't follow you half the time, but hey, we love you. No, we really appreciate your service, Bonnie, and sorry to see you go. Any further discussion?
I'll still be here.
We're now adjourned.
Motion to adjourn.
We are now approved to adjourn. Thank you.